Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Sunday. Happy Father's Day. It's Daryl here. It is bright and freaking early, man. It's 3 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. I'm sure I talked about this last Father's Day. I am not a fan of Father's Day. This is one of my least favorite times of year. And the main reason why is my father died of brain cancer when I was 9 years old. And his birthday falls in 4 days on the 20th. So usually it's just not a great time of year for me. Last year I probably talked about my dad and some other stuff. I thought about this morning. I'm going to talk about my mom dating after my father died. And the reason I'm going to talk about this is I'm sure there's lots of women out there that have lost their husbands and have kids. There's lots of other guys out there, or girls, or women, or men that have gone through similar things as I have, and it's for you guys. All right, so let me get into this. Okay, so like I said, so he came down with brain cancer when I was 9 years old. I still remember the very first sign. He was starting to get double vision, and he was standing in the living room, and he was covering one eye. And I thought this was a game. I was only 9 years old, and I thought it was a game. And so I stood in front of him and covered my eye. And he was looking at the clock trying to read the numbers. And, I thought it was a big game. I thought we were having fun. And he was getting double vision from a tumor in the back of his head, a malignant tumor. I learned those words at 9 years old. He was gone within a couple months. It was one of the most horrific things any 9-year-old boy could go through. It got to the point where he didn't even know who I was. I was a 9-year-old boy. My mom was standing behind me. He was in a hospital bed, and he didn't recognize me. He didn't recognize her. He withered away. He was a 200-pound, 5'11" game warden. Tough guy, a man's man, a fighter. He taught me boxing. He had a gun collection. And he withered away to nothing. I swore if I ever got cancer. I remember looking at him, and at 9 years old, I told myself, if I ever get cancer, I am not going to let the doctors do a thing to me. None of this chemo, none of this surgery. I'm just let me die, because I knew he was going to die. The worst thing was watching him weave baskets. Actually weave baskets. My father was this big, tough park ranger. He ran the whole crew at the state park. He was the boss. And here he was sitting in a hospital day room weaving baskets. About half the weight. He was probably under 100 pounds at this point. I honestly, when he died, I cried the day he died, but I was relieved because he was already gone. Okay, let me talk about this. So my mom, was my father died when he was 32 years old, in 1975. And my mom was only maybe 29 years old at the time, and I was a 9-year-old kid. She started dating again. This was a terrible time for me. I freaking hated the guys that she dated with a passion. I mean, I red hot hate, because they were replacing my father. I still remember one of my father's best friends. Now that I've gone through that age, now that I've been 29 and 30, and I've had girlfriends that have lost their husbands, and I understand it now. My mom was lonely. She was concerned about her daughter and her son, and providing for them and protecting them and all that. I understand it now. I completely understand it. Me and my mom have my mother's my best friend right now. I could honestly say that. But back then I didn't understand it, and I didn't want to understand it. I remember the very first date my mother went on. It just was like a knife in my heart. It was probably about 10 months after. It was a respectable time. There was plenty of time after my dad died. It was probably 10 months to a year after, maybe even more. I don't know. And it was my father's best friend. And I knew they went out. My grandmother was watching me, and they came home. I was in bed, and I went up to go to the bathroom. And I walked into the living room on my way to the bathroom, and this guy, Marty, I'll call him, was, he worked with my dad. He was a good guy. He was sitting on the couch, and they weren't doing anything. My mother was sitting on the couch, but this is what bothered me so much. She was sitting kind of facing him, with her legs up on the couch and kind of looking, they were face to face. They weren't kissing or touch, she might have been leaning on him a little bit, but they were just sitting on the couch talking. But the way she was sitting, like intimately facing him, it's nothing now. I know it sounds ridiculous, but to a 10-year-old, 9-year-old boy who lost his dad a year earlier, I hated him. I still remember, and they were drinking. They had like they had bought a glass of wine or something. Not a lot, not drunk or anything. This is a weird thing, and I wonder if this is connected now. Because whenever, I swear to God, this is the only reason I could find for this. I have this mental issue when I hear, I think it's called, autophobia, or I forgot what it's called. But when I hear a particular sound, I get enraged. I get angry. I don't even know I'm hearing it. Sometimes I'll hear it in the background. All of a sudden I'll get angry and I'll realize it was on TV. And it's the sound of like liquid pouring out of a wine bottle. Like a very narrow, it's a very specific sound, and it just makes me enraged. And I don't even know I'm hearing it sometimes. And I wonder if it has something to do with that night, with them drinking that champagne, because it's the only thing I could figure. But if I ever hear that sound now, I don't even know I'm hearing it. I could be out here, just doing this, and all of a sudden I start getting, and I realize it was on TV, and I don't even know I'm hearing it. And it's a sound of liquid going glug, 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 and pouring into a glass. That sound it's an actual mental, I wouldn't call it disorder. I forgot what it's like a phobia, except it makes me angry. And it's a real thing. But I hated him. And I hated seeing that. I went back to bed and I cried, and I hated Marty with a white hot hate. They never dated again. To this day, I think I probably still hate him, with no rational, but he was, nobody could replace my dad. First guy my mother dated after was a cop. I don't know why I don't know why. And he was younger than her, probably about 8 years younger. He was a young, good-looking cop, and he was in his 20s, and he was still dating around, and he cheated on her, and I hated him too. I hated him with a way high. I remember him and my mother talking to me and saying, Daryl, you're trying to your mom's got a date, and I'm not a bad guy, trying to talk to me. And I remember just staring straight ahead and just blanking out. And they almost thought there was something wrong with me, because I would just zoned them right out. I stared straight ahead, and everything just blacked out all around what I was staring at. And I just zoned everything out while they were talking to me. And they thought I was like going into a coma or something. I still remember that. After that, because he cheated on her, my mom dated another cop from the other town next door. This is the guy. He was older this time, about 20 years older than her. This guy was a bad guy. This guy was a predator, and he did things to me that for 3 or 4 years, so I was 14 till I actually fought him off. Things I can't even say on here. The worst things. Everything. The worst thing you could imagine happened to a young boy, he did to me. Yeah. To say I hate him, he passed away a little while ago, and I wanted to go to his grave, and I wanted to relieve myself on his grave. I know I should let this stuff go. She finally ended up, she started working at the post office, and she met this kind of quiet guy, and he lost his father when he was my age, and that's who she married, and that's who I still have a hard time calling him a stepfather. See, this is the hard thing I have with Father's Day, because when they got married, I was 21 years old. They waited until I was 21, and they got a house, and my sister and my mom and him went to live somewhere else. And they rented the first house to me at 21 years old. So I never lived with my stepfather, the guy that my mom is still married to now. She's been married to him longer than she was married to my original father, my actual father. And he's a good guy. I like him. He treats her good. He's got his faults here and there, but he's a good guy. He's a lot like me. He lost his father when he was young. He's kind of mild until he's angry. He's got issues like me, and I won't get into it, but I like him. Here's the problem, though. On Father's Day, I have a hard time. He's not my father. I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I bought him a card this year, and I finally broke down. For years, I refused to buy a card that said, Dad, because he's not my dad, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. But I just never looked at him as my dad or my father. He's Bill. He's my stepfather. And I have a hard time even calling him my stepfather. I finally broke down this year and just, bought a card that said Dad on it. I don't know if this makes a difference to him or not. I don't think it does. I don't know. But first year, after like 25 years, I finally bought him a card that says Dad on it. And that's, and he's the first guy that, luckily that I could tolerate. Let's just put it that way. Nobody ever replaces your original father, And unfortunately, I only knew mine for 9 years. Leave some comments down below if you've had similar. I'd really be interested in hearing your comments if you had similar experiences. I'll be back later. I got a video about Gordon Ramsay. Me and Gordon have way more in common than I ever wanted to admit. That's coming up next. I'm going to do that video today. You'll see that downloaded today, Sunday. That's the second video I'm going to download. Have a good Father's Day.